food security and Nigerian food system, the livestock development and national action plan, as well as the strategic intervention of the federal government in recent time, and Nigerian food system policy formulation. The federal government has unveiled the National Strategic and Action Plan, NSAP, for the management of animal genetic resources, agro, to ensure effective conservation, utilization and development of Nigerian livestock sector. According to the Minister of Livestock Development, E.D. Maya, the NSAP is described as a major milestone in a country's history. He said the strategy was developed under the Livestock Productivity and Resilience Support Project, LPRES, and aligned with international directive. Maya also noted that the document reaffirmed Nigeria's commitment to the Interlinking Declaration of 2007, adopted by 106 countries, including Nigeria, and development at the first International Technical Conference on Animal Genetic Resources for Food and Agricultural Aid in Switzerland in 2018. The plan aims to promote the wise management of animal genetic resources and serve as a framework of international cooperation on animal genetic resources, agro, as well as it's also a critical tool for domesticating the global plan of action for the management of these resources. Joining me on the show today is Dr. Emeka Okengwu, a development economist who are so passionate about Nigerian food security as well as other development concerns in Nigeria. Doc, a very good day to you and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
All right. Exactly. So, this discussion was supposed to have had it some days back. We'll have to schedule it for today so that we can have ample time to have a dissection on this particular policy. What was your reaction when you heard or saw this document on livestock development by federal government of Nigeria?
Well, the livestock development documents didn't just jump into the fray. It's been a long work, as it were. Remember, there was a committee set up that was headed by Jega.
Yeah, exactly.
To start looking at developing the framework before the ministry was even, announced or created. So it's really not, it didn't just jump out of the sky. There a lot of work has been done into it. A lot of stakeholder engagements were also held. But in one word, I think it's a good document, and if well pursued, it can be able to, produce some good intentions or outputs for the Nigerian livestock sector.
Exactly. And now taking a look at the document myself, and when I dissected, I discovered that the federal government is so passionate in the areas improving our vital food supply chain.
Yeah.
And many people will be wondering, most times, it's not for a recent time, many Nigerians begin to understand livestock play a role in our food chain and food value chain particularly. But from your own understanding, can you help us to dissect this vital importance of this in our food supply chain?
Well, first, when you talk about livestock, there are two things you're talking about. First, you're talking about protein, okay, which is very, very, critical. You're also talking about fat and oils, which is also, very much needed. So there's no way you can discountenance livestock into your food system or food programs, however it is you want to look at it. So it is not only critical, it is central. Okay, it's also something, that has to do with prestige, as it were. You see yourself as not doing so well when you're not able to see, protein or protein sources in your meals. So it's a whole lot to everything, but like you said already, it's very central, it's very critical, not only to even our food systems, but for economic, diversification and empowerment. A lot of value chains can come out of a livestock, sector. So it's just not food alone, it's also employment. Yeah, it's also social cohesion, and otherwise, as it were. So it's important.
Right. When you talk about employment, many people will be wondering, how does that come in to this? Because I knew on this show on several occasions, when we discussed food economy in Nigeria, I knew your passion in the area of not just the primary aspect of of agriculture, but you take it long into that in-depth aspect of the secondary, the post-secondary aspect of it. So can you take us through?
Okay, let's take it from a tangent now. Let's talk about canning. If you're talking about canning, you're talking about your steel industry.
Exactly.
So have we put a relationship now? Okay. Now let's talk about supermarket, your chain stores. Let's talk about logistics. Okay, you need transportation to be able to, move whatever it is that you're getting out of your food chain. let's talk about your medications. Let's talk about your feed stock. You'll be needing bones. You'll be needing blood meal. Let's even talk about, production of your vaccines. Some of these vaccines are produced, using animal fats. All right. Let's talk about your fashion. Okay. Let's talk about your shoes. Let's talk about your belts.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's talk about your car seats. Let's talk about your furniture. All right. So there is so much that you can get about that. I mean, even your little buttons, that you have on your shirts. Okay. Let's even talk about your construction. Now, there's something they call cellular lightweight concrete. It's actually made from, biodegradable materials from cow horns. Okay, and it's actually replacing or can replace steel up to 4 stories, up to 4 floors. This comes from the hooves, of cows. So let's talk about your mint. Let's talk about your wool. All right. Now, remember that I've not mentioned meat.
Exactly, which is quite very central.
So meat now becomes a little not so central. In fact, a little inconsequential when you are now looking at these other, variables and factors. Okay, not to talk about your canned beefs now. Okay, so it's endless. It's endless, and again, we are creating ecosystems from just one product. Okay, we have not talked about the bone meal. We have not talked about the blood meal.
Now, Doc, another very sensitive aspect of this discussion is a lot of Nigerians watching us will say we are not short of having this kind of policy. We are not short of having this kind of very laudable policy. But in regards to having a full implementation of this policy, we know federal government on its own will be doing everything possible to get this done. But the subnationals, how can we bring them into this kind of policy roadmap that we have initiated for ourselves?
Well, instead of making it top bottom, why don't you make it bottom up? Okay, so if you're saying that the subnationals are going to be the problem, take it to them. So what should have happened, and I'm sure this, a lot of sensitization, a lot of agreements, would have been drawn up now. Okay, at least I know that 1 or 2 states, Gombe, I think, Bauchi, has the biggest ranch in Nigeria thus far. Yobe probably hosts the biggest cattle market you have in West Africa, if not even, the whole of Africa. So now, in getting the sub-nationals involved, I think it might also be important that we understand that the federal government's wish will not translate into action if it is not driven by the right, players or the right stakeholders. And who will this be? This will be your private sector. So in all this, government has done policy. It should have been left at that level of policy. And then you can now have what you call your policy or program support instruments that might come through the way of maybe some kind of hedge funding, some kind of subsidized, programming, some kind of, tax holidays and all that. But there has to be, in every other place that cattle has or livestock, has operated or operates efficiently, you find out that what government just brings is a policy. You have people who are livestock farmers, okay, people whose business are to be able to now control the livestock value chain, okay, and they are not government people.
Exactly. Now, talking about the private sector, which are really drawing into this discussion right now, most of them, we know that they normally complain about funding, they normally complain about the friendly environment for their businesses. But from your own understanding with this document that we have now, will it guarantee that business friendly for the private sector in Nigeria? Nothing
can guarantee, no document, no written document can guarantee safety. No. What the written documents might do is to maybe guarantee inflows. But even at that, in guaranteeing those inflows, if are too high risk, then you find out that they'll be asking you for impossible guarantees. Sometimes to the extent of you might even be doing 100 and something % of guaranteeing that thing. It simply means that there's little or no belief or trust in what you're doing. The best guarantees are what they call the cash flow based guarantees. Okay, where your cash flow now, shows your returns both on equity and in investment, and then you shows clearly where your break-even points are. And there's no way, considering the value that cattle has, it won't be viable. But it also requires for you, to be very measured and clear in the back-end value inputs. Okay, the health of those livestock so that they can be competitive internationally and locally. And then, your slaughter systems, your heading systems, your breeding systems. So these are all the things that a policy document might not guarantee. There has to be what you call a PPA, a planned program of action that begins to show you where the feeds are coming from, how sustainable that source will be, where the medication is going to be coming from, and how, again, sustainable, it will be, and every other thing that is required at the back end. Now, that way, you do not now have a business that creates its own crisis. Okay, how does this create its own crisis? In the search of food, which they must have. They ruin other people's crops, which is their food.
Exactly.
All right, so now cattle eating somebody's grass will be cattle that is feeding. Okay, but what you're eating is not somebody's crops that are not destroying the person's livelihood. So if as a program where we as a country has deliberate efforts, to make certain that we have forage. Okay, we have forage, we have food, we have feedlots, all right, we have bands, we have storages, all right, and then we have proper statistics of where, when, how, it's going to be aggregated and distributed. Then it's a whole for us.
Exactly. Although from the part of expert, agro expert and some livestock expert, they have even expressed optimism that this policy is the way to go. But what you just highlighted here now, in your own understanding, will this policy capture that the S-man cattle rearers issues?
Even if it does, as I'm saying, that there are 3 levels to policy. There's policy, there's program, there's action.
Exactly.
All right. So policy is not enough. Policy is the wish list, if you may. The program is the framework, the action is the funding.
Exactly.
Okay, and the clear. So these 3 things must come together for you to have a clear understanding. Okay, like I said, I am a yam farmer, a cassava farmer. I've planted my crops.
Exactly.
You are a livestock farmer. Okay, your animal must eat. Okay, just like I must eat, and I must make money. Now we must be able to create, that red line. Okay, where we don't cross. Yes, you can use my peels when I harvest them, and come to think about it, cassava peels compounded with soya beans is actually very, very efficient. It's nutrition laden, for livestock, but you need to allow that cassava to get to that point of maturity where you can take the peels. But in between where you're waiting, what is that cattle going to be eating? Okay, so policy, yes, for me will be, this is the plan, this is how it should be. Is that feasibility, if you may? Is that bankable study? Is that pathway? Okay, but there has to be action.
Exactly. Now, talking about action, a lot of other experts, particularly economists that have come across who lauded the federal government for this particular policy, were saying this is a global competitive policy that will also take us to the global world. But, another thing that will draw us back, or I would say can draw us back, is are we really ready to globally competitive with this kind of policy that we are putting in place? Because what I'm asking this question is that we have this policy, but you made mention of something. Policy is divided into 3. You have the action plan, you have the funding, then you have the programs. With all this being put together, are we really ready for it?
Well, you don't have to. You don't have to be at 100% ready to go to work before you go to work.
I understand that.
The first thing is to wake up. No matter how grudgy you're feeling, is to go and put some water on your face and take a bath, and then try to, put yourself in a shape where you can go and pursue.
Exactly.
So you don't need to be 100%, sheep ready, before you can actually set sail. That's the point I'm trying to make. So we've taken the first step. I mean, this is not the first livestock policy we've had. We've always have our ANGRES, the animal, growth programs. We've always had our cattle multiplication centers that have existed there, for forever. As some of them as old as 60, 70 years. We have some ranches in this country that are owned by the Western administration, Western government. Okay, so ranching is not a new thing. Okay, so, but what it is now is that the impetus and the urgency it brings is now what is making it look as if, or the crisis that was created, in those periods where the policy didn't seem to be very effective. But and there's a lot to this. A lot of developments you had very clear cattle routes before, that have somehow been lost to the attrition, urbanization, and all that. So we just need to rethink it through, and then make certain that those flashpoints are dealt with. What are for me the most 3 important things for you to be able to keep livestock is that you must have a place to keep them.
Exactly.
You must have food to give to them. You must be able to provide adequate medical attention for them, and then you must be able to now have a value process that leads them to slaughter and then onto the table. The moment you do this, Brazil has over 230-something million cattle. You don't see anyone straying. So it's about planning it well and thinking it through. Really.
And in talking about planning it and thinking it well, just recently we saw the Brazil vice president that came to Nigeria about a week ago, and he met with the vice president. A lot of initiative within Nigerian government and Brazil government. And just at the BRIC meeting undergoing in Brazil, we also saw the President Bola Tinubu meeting with the Brazil president. What are we really taking some initiative that have been practiced, implemented in Brazil? Is that why we are seeing some of these policies?
That was the pronouncement of both the president and the both vice president. We're going to be, unlearning each other. Okay,
exactly.
We're going to be, taking, looking at what it is you have done, what has worked for you, and then what can work for us. So it's how that synergy, is built. So I hope something comes out of it.
Exactly. Now let's also look at it, because this particular policy that Nigeria is putting in place is not just for Nigeria alone. Other African countries, about over 50 of them in category of the 106 countries that have put pen to paper for this global policy are also involved. But why I'm bringing other African countries into this is because we normally see countries go for policy that is globally linked. But at the end of the day, we discover that most of them is either there is a slush fund somewhere that people want to collect or access, or there's one benefit or the other that will get. They'll bring it down here, but before you know it, you don't get down to the right people that's supposed to get use of it. What's your take on that? The moment you have a good M&A framework, and you have a good reward and punishment system, things will fall into place. So it's determination to make certain that you don't do wrong, and in doing right you're protected, and then people will do right. Okay. Very interesting. Now, Doc, another aspect that we quickly need to take on this discussion is this: even though we have extracted the benefit of this particular policy, even in your submission, you also made mention of what we need to do so that we can get this thing work for us. But in your own understanding, what are the likable challenges in this document?
I mentioned it to you now. First to be, where do you keep the cattle? Secondly, what do you feed the cattle? Okay. Third is, what markets do you have? Okay. So the moment you have these things, you solve. What transport systems you have? Are you going to be letting them walk all the way, from Kenya to Aba and then back? Okay, so the transport infrastructure is key, the energy infrastructure is key, the food support systems are key. I mean, when I'm talking about food, water also falls into it, and then of course the medication.
Exactly.
These are the challenges. The moment this is solved,
so let's take a leap into one of the goals of this particular policy, talking about Nigerian food policy formulation. How germane is this in the area of the food security of Nigeria? I'm bringing this up because when people hear us talking about food security on TV or on radio, they begin to talk about the challenges that come with it, the insecurity, the lack of food production, the fertilizer issue. But from your own understanding, how can we link this up directly to food production?
Those challenges are actually the pathways. Okay, those challenges are actually the steps. Maybe a little broken, maybe not very tightened. Okay, but you have identified it, and the moment you identify whatever challenge, you know 50% of your sample, you have actually solved 50% of the problem. Okay, so if you remove the challenge of you're able to grow enough forage, that's gone. Okay, if you're able to now build aggregators, that can be able to now create containment areas for the cattle, that's gone. If you're able to build the proper transport infrastructure that can take them from one point to the other, and they don't need to walk, get trained, and then walk through people's properties and farms, that's done. And then by the time you remove all these challenges, I say, well, what happens? Okay, so that's what it is.
All right, let's take another very interesting aspect of what the federal government have been doing in the area of Nigerian food policy formulation. I know Doctor is aware, he's so passionate about agriculture in Nigeria, particularly the agroeconomic aspect of Nigerian development. And I won't forget to say, Doc is also very passionate about not just the primary production of food through agriculture, but other aspects of this. Secondary, the post-secondary aspect is also very key. Just 2 weeks ago, the federal government launched over 2,000 tractors. Doc, what's your reaction to that? 2,000 tractors.
Well, it's a good, very good, noteworthy initiative. But technically, a drop in the ocean. If you put those 2,000 tractors against 84 million hectares of land, you won't see them. All right, but it's a good initiative. It's a very good initiative because we need to plow, we need to plant, we need to plant enough, to be able to feed our 200 million. So it's most commendable, I can tell you.
All right. Now, I really also want to, we all commend the president, we commend the government for taking that initiative. Well, there is something someone draw my attention. They say, okay, these 2,000 tractors, they are coming in. Not that this is the first time government will be putting out tractors, but one thing that normally keep this kind of policy not to be too popular, because by the time when it comes to maintenance of those tractors, become a challenge. You now draw my attention to importation of spare parts for those tractors. But I was shocked and not disappointed when the federal government came out. These tractors, in terms of maintenance, NASENI, National Agency for Science, and will be coming in to assist. And I was so happy about it.
Well, you see, what NASENI is actually supposed to be doing is reverse engineer. Okay, what they're supposed to be doing, we have the National Automotive Center, and then Agriculture Equipment Center, I think somewhere in Kwara or something. What they're supposed to be doing is, see, the basic thing in that tractor is the engine, and everybody, knows is either a Cummins or Rolls Royce or whatever. It's the parts that are actually the major issues, and the moment you're able to produce or reproduce those parts or have the capacity to maintain them, then your systems will run very freely. So being able to help is one, being able to reverse engineer, should be the alternate goal.
Very interesting. And on the aspect of that 2,000 tractors that was launched by the federal government, their aim is to ensure that they were able to plow over 500,000 hectares of land, affecting over 500,000 households. So, this is huge. But in your submission, you said it's still a drop in the ocean.
About 250 million, 230 something million, 500,000.
Exactly.
Drop in the ocean. But it's a good way to go. We can now start growing in multiples if we are able to now first and foremost have, a military attitude to it. Okay, precision. Let's just keep expanding.
Exactly.
We have it all. The good ones have nothing of a bad. No hurricane, no cyclone, no earthquake, nothing. So, and we have climate weather. We can plant all year round. We have over 300 and something dams. So it's a win-win. All we just need to do is to build a framework that ensures discipline, ensures focus, has a plan that is outputted. Okay, have programs that are demand and result, oriented, and then we'll climb.
Exactly. Now, to still talking about the tractors launched by federal government of Nigeria, there was this particular company that came to Nasarawa State. I followed the story up, also interact with the officials of Nasarawa State government. They came to Nasarawa State to set up a tractor, in their state, and they also partner with Nasani. But the question that I've been asked is that how much of this do we need to call on the private sector to also invest in this kind of area?
You don't even need to call. If the private sector will go where money, money has a very strong pull. It's very magnetic. The moment you put, the right systems that protect money will come. It's that simple.
And Doc, you are correct. I interacted with a farmer in Nasarawa State. He has about 5 hectares. And to plow each of the 5 hectares by a private tractor was 250,000.
Because of the cost of
okay, because of the cost of the fuel that we're going to be used. But in the area of states, I will still go back to subnational government. I know they are trying on their part, but the effort that federal government normally pull when it comes to some of this national policy is quite huge. But the commensurable aspect from the subnational government is also very important, that we have to say. But from your own understanding, in the area of food production, which of the state government have you seen so pulling weight in this aspect?
I'd rather pass.
Don't say you will pass because you have not seen any or what?
I didn't say so. I'd rather pass.
Oh, okay. But for our viewers, I've seen that some states are pulling weight behind agriculture. I've seen Akwa Ibom State doing a bit. I've seen Nasarawa State doing a bit. For FCT, I've not heard anything from the Minister of FCT talking about food production. That's why the last media chat that he had, I was expecting that my colleague who were there to ask him what is the economic indicators of the FCT, what are the GDP of FCT, what is it doing about food production. Even the FCT also have valuable land for food production. We didn't add anything. But for that aspect, we need to. This
is why I passed, because you're just talking about it in bits. You see, agriculture, you don't just run evaluations because of what you perceive. You need to run evaluations on facts and figures. Okay, so maybe if you want us to be able to look into that, we would need to look at what they have done so that you'll be fair, in your assessments. It will be very unfair, for you to talk about Akwa Ibom because I'm an Akwa Ibom by television and I say, oh, they have done so well. And then when they say so well, you say, oh, so well. Okay, that will not be very professional. Okay, our professional ethic demands that you must be data backed.
Exactly.
Okay, whatever it is you say, you must be certain. Okay, that it is factual and fair. Okay, so those analyses will be probably something we might be able to do and then do a proper run so that we can look at statistics, look at numbers, look at involvement, look at expenditure, look at outputs. Okay, look at both the return on investments and return on equity. Okay, and then look at the gaps, maybe the infrastructure needed that is not there and why. Look at the energy access, look at road infrastructure. So it's a huge one. I mean, you're asking me what will take me 1 hour to do. If you want that, I'll take you on, but let's be ready.
I know you have given me a section or an area that we need to concentrate on. Maybe when next we are bringing you on, we have to look at subnational performance or engagement in the food production in Nigeria. Very likely. I know you'll be up to that.
So that I can give them a right of reply.
Exactly. So, Rob, let's also look at another aspect of in the area of this policy that we have been dissecting in the last 20 minutes, talking about the Nigerian master plan or plan of action in the area of animal resource development in Nigeria. And one of the key aspects of what the government is also targeting is also to ensure that Nigerians follow the developed countries who have enjoyed the benefit of animal husbandry, animal resource management and the rest of them. But many Nigerians who may not understand what the importance of these livestock resources will also be asking the question, which is on the issue of budgeting of the Ministry of Agriculture, because it's very key. Because when we now have two ministries that one is focusing on agri, the other one is focusing on livestock. Because I come across from my colleague that will ask me, Adefola, you are always on economic issue. What is the issue around budgeting for these ministries? Doc, maybe you help us to highlight.
Well, you see, a budget is a financial plan that is couched in figures, technically. So a budget does not guarantee that it's cash backed. So after the budgeting, you also need to be looking at the sources of funding. And sometimes these budgets for things like this that already has value, should be based on some support instruments to be able to now let them grow, organically and be able to be competitive. Okay, so yes, government should be able to support when they are budding, like they are now. But I think that most of these things, and this is why I mentioned the role of the private sector.
Exactly.
Okay, you must be able to bring them in, and then instead of now running on budget provisions alone, you run on cash flows. All right, so that way it becomes a business. Because it's possible for you to be able to spend a budget and then retire it, okay, as a program. But it's difficult for you to spend on a cash flow, without you now being able to now do your deep analysis, on the gaps, and then, either doing your SWOT or something. So that's very important.
Exactly. So before I let you go, almost our time is almost up, but before I let you go, there's also the coming up of the CBN NPC meeting for July 21st, 22nd. You are a development economist, and I know you also have passion for microeconomy or monetary policy economy of the CBN. What's your take on the forthcoming NPC?
I don't think a lot will change. I don't think a lot will change because you see, what has happened is that if you look at the trajectory of the new CBN system, they have been very firm, you know, on their area of focus, and that is this macroeconomic stabilization, and then first and foremost, you know, making certain that they strengthen or stabilize the naira vis-a-vis, you know, its exchange value. So let's see how it goes. It's work in progress. A lot of prices are being paid by everybody.
Exactly.
So we just hope that God there and our deep thinking and commitment will be able to get us also where we are now.
Exactly. And in talking about your think deeping, the last time you were here, we discussed about naira stability, and you made mention of something that before we talk about stability, we should be able to stabilize. Stable what is coming in. And from what you have seen so far, I announced on my show that what we have now as naira exchange to the dollar is now what we started the year with, 1,528, between 1,528 and 1,535. But we are back to that now. What do you think makes the difference?
Well, first and foremost, discipline. Second, you know, being astute. Third, also not being sentimental in taking decisions. But you know that it's also important that we are as inclusive as we should be. Okay, I think that we need to relax a little bit on the rigidity on social inclusion. That's very, very critical. You know, if you're talking about 500,000, you know, affected out of 200 million, I don't even think you've 500,000 out of 10 million is not even such a good figure. Okay, because it will be about 0.5% or less. Then imagine 500,000 against 200 million. Okay, that might be 0.05%, and that's not much. But it's okay, it's work in progress. You know, let's just keep pushing and believing that we'll get our country back onto the path of prosperity. Okay?
I really love your last one. You get our country back on the right path for progress. Now, Doc, I'm on Livatrice. One more question. Inflation figure for last May was quite very interesting. I was expecting the one for June to come out any moment from now from NBS. What's your take on it?
I'm not interested in inflation. I'm interested in rebasing. Let's get.
I think they're also coming up with a new new policy coming up.
Yeah, so let's wait for the rebasing first,
so we can know our direction.
Yes, then we can deal with inflation.
Right. I've been speaking with Dr. Emeka Okengwu, a development economist, who have helped us understand the goals, the aims, the marshalling of the new policy of the federal government in terms of livestock development and resource management in Nigeria. And from Doc, it's a laudable policy that needs to be embraced by all. And not just that, it's a policy that will bring so much succor in the area of livestock development in Nigeria. And he also made mention that it is a policy that not just for federal government alone, the private sector also have a role to play in it. Doc, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Leko.